The definition of stoichiometry is a calculation of relative quantities of reactants and products in chemical reactions. Our objective was to determine the limiting reagent of different ratios of two solutions. Our two different solutions were potassium hydroxide and copper sulfate.
Have you got color in your cheeks?
We used potassium hydroxide, copper sulfate, 8 test tubes, water, a pipette, and a burette. First, we began with potassium hydroxide and started off by adding 1 milliliter of it into the tube, increased the amount by 1 as each tube progressed. Next, we used copper sulfate and added an equal amount of 5 milliliters to each tube, finally adding water to each tube until they all had 13 milliliters of solution. The mixture was stirred and sat for 15 minutes.
For our results, we obtained different heights of precipitate in millimeters. In test tube 1, we obtained 4 millimeters, test tube 2, 9 millimeters, test tube 3, 59 millimeters, test tube 4, 37 millimeters, test tube 5, 47 millimeters, test tube 6, 40 millimeters, test tube 7, 58 millimeters, and test tube 8, 70 millimeters. We observed the separation of two colors. The clear color was the potassium sulfate in an aqueous form, and the blue color was the copper hydroxide in a solid form.
The height in tubes 5 through 8 did not completely level off because of a limiting reagent, which was copper sulfate, which limited the amount of product produced. On our next experiment, we could be more observant with the amount of drops or liquid that gets put into the tubes.
So I wanna know what time it should. Simmer down and poker up. I'm sorry to interrupt, it's just